Hey guys, what's up? So today I'm going to cover some classic WoW news. So we have the stress test, the final stress test that you see this footage is from. This is just me leveling from 1 to level 10. This is like partway through the stress test, so there's a lot of people around. It's not actually right at the beginning. That being said, that's what's going to be playing in the background. Hope you guys enjoy that, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about things that we've seen in the stress test, some news that we've gotten on Classic WoW, and just kind of updating everyone on some stuff. So first off, I have to say that this stress test, in terms of the starting area, was a lot of fun. There's a lot of people in the area. They did not have, like, in terms of layers, the layers were packed with players, whereas in the last stress test, it was fairly empty, I would say, early on. They cranked up the numbers later on, but we had already left the starting area, so I wasn't really sure what those felt like. So it was fun to have all those people around competing over mobs and everything like that. It gave the game a feeling of, you know, being really alive and whatnot, having like tons of players around. With that being said, I do think dynamic respawns is a pretty good option, especially with the way that they're rolling it out. How you know, it's just proximity. If there's a lot of players in the area, then the dynamic respawns will start kicking in, and you'll get a lot more respawns than you would if there was, you know, just a few people around. So it seems to be working pretty well. Sometimes things do spawn quite quickly and right on top of you. That's just something that you have to deal with. But one thing that I have noticed in the beta, and you will actually see some of that in this footage when I get to the knoll camp when you leave the starting area in the Taran spot, so you're like right around level 6 and 7. Those knolls will, like, if they get on a player and then that player dies, they just leash to the nearest player, even if that player didn't touch those mobs, they didn't interact with those mobs or the player that died in any way. And I do not remember that being in Classic. So that being said, you know, I don't know if that's a bug or not. I did report it. We'll see, you know, where that goes. But when I was leveling, I was also in a call with some other people who were leveling in the Orc area, and they had that same issue where, you know, someone went and pulled on the Troll Island, I should say. They pulled a bunch of the trolls, you know, like the voodoo trolls and the hex trolls, and then they ended up dying, and then all the trolls that they had on them just ran to, you know, the nearest player, even if they hadn't interacted with them at all. So that definitely needs to be fixed. That's extremely annoying, and you could almost grief with that. You could just run in and get yourself killed by like 3 or 4 mobs, and then those mobs are instantly going to leash to the nearest player, which is pretty silly. So that's a huge issue. Beyond that, there's a lot of things that were in the beta that have been fixed in this stress test, since it's the more updated client. So obviously strafing is a big one that's been fixed. A lot of the hunter bugs that were on the beta have been fixed. There's not really anything that I see wrong with Druid, but I didn't really see anything wrong with Druid in the stress test, in the beta either. So the stress test is looking really good. Beyond that, I will mention that we did have the announcement where servers were announced, and I believe there's 9 total in the US. I personally think this is far too few. You obviously don't want dead servers, but I feel like Blizzard is underestimating the amount of people that are going to be playing on these servers. I know there's going to be a lot of player fallout where you're going to have people that, you know, play for a few days, or, you know, a friend told them that they should try it out, or they're coming over from BFA to try out Classic, or they're watching a streamer and they're going to try Classic. So there's going to be a lot of people that fall off. That's obvious. But that being said, I just feel like the amount of servers that they have is so few. And this leads me to the next issue, which is layering. So I don't really even know how to address this. Layering has become like this, you know, this thing that's difficult to talk about, because some people just hate it, like right away, like they just talk trash on layering, and I definitely get it, but like there has to be some kind of solution, right? And so Blizzard's solution is layering, and I don't really have a better solution myself. just because of how many players I do think will quit. And if you didn't have layers, they would have to have, 5-10 times the amount of servers that they have, and so that means that there's going to be a lot of servers that the population just dies on, and that's not good for player base either. So I think layering is a necessary evil. That being said, I think there's still a lot of glaring issues with it. One of the biggest issues that I have so far is just the fact that they say it's going to be gone after phase 1 because of world PvP starting in phase 2, but I just don't see that happening. Even if there's a lot of player fallout, with just having nine realms, like, a lot of people that stop playing in phase 1 will come back regardless for phase 2 because of the PvP system being in. And so you're going to have either massive queue times, like I'm talking hours and hours of sitting in a queue, or you're going to have to continue having layering in, which they said layering would be out in phase 2. So I don't know how they're going to do this personally. I really don't. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. Is layering my favorite thing? Definitely not. Do I think it's, one of the only decent solutions on the table? Sadly, kind of. But like I said, we're going to have to see where that takes us, because I think that is, the biggest red flag for Classic right now is the layering system. Another thing that's been being discussed a lot recently is streamer servers and just streamers in Classic WoW. I kind of want to stay away from getting too much into this topic, but I have been asked about it. I believe that the streamer server thing is kind of like streamers. You're going to run into streamers regardless, just of how few servers there are. Now, if there was something like, 20 to 30 servers, I think it'd be much easier to stay away from streamer servers. If you are really wanting to stay away from streamer servers and you want to have like a very organic and fun Classic experience, and you don't want to have to deal with any kind of outside influence from like specific gamers and things like that, my suggestion would be to roll on a RP PvP server. That's what I would be rolling on if I wasn't in a specific guild. I think that server is going to be a lot of fun. And that's just my suggestion if you're trying to avoid streamers. Now, for anyone else who's just wanting to roll on like a PvP server, you're going to run the risk of running into different streamers. Not all streamers are just coordinating this massive server. I know people have talked about like a lot of the streamers are going to be all on one server, but that's like a handful of like the WoW streamers. You still have other streamers that are coming in from the outside from different games that are going to be playing WoW. And there's just nothing you can do to avoid that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that leads me kind of into my next topic, which is Classic WoW is going to be different than it was before. I know a lot of people were big on no changes, and I was as well. That being said, there's so many things that are going to be changed in the game just because of the day and age that we live in now. In terms of people's hardcore mentality when it comes to video games, having third-party software like Discord and different, TeamSpeak, Mumble, all that kind of stuff. You just have the ability to have specific Discords or Reddits for your server, and things like that just affect the game. There's no way around it. You're not going to have the exact same experience that you had back in Classic. I know personally that my experience with the game more recently I've been having a lot more fun with the game than I did back in Classic. I think when I was younger and I was playing the game, I took it for granted. I think I didn't appreciate just how fun the game was. I didn't realize how much effort had gone into the making of Classic and making such a great game. So now that I know a lot more about the game, I'm able to enjoy it a lot more. I guess hopefully that makes sense. I think it's just one of those things that I enjoy the game a lot more because of my knowledge base going back into it. And I think a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised with how much fun they have on Classic. It's definitely not just a nostalgia trip. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, you might be thinking, Ebbnflow, you're very, very positive about the game, and I have this concern, I have that concern, I think Classic is going to die, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of people that have those feelings out there, and I just choose to remain positive overall about the game. I've been having tons and tons of fun myself personally. The thing that I find funny is I'll watch some certain YouTubers or streamers that have a very, very negative outlook on the game, and they are constantly complaining about different quote unquote changes, but then I'll watch their gameplay and they're commenting on something like, oh, I'm 90% sure this was not in Classic, and it's something that I'm positive was in Classic. And then they'll be arguing about this is an aspect I really don't like about this change is just game breaking, blah, blah, blah. And then they don't even really they're not even familiar with like a class or a questing route or something like that. And it's one of those things that if you sit there and choose to nitpick and complain about every little aspect, you'll convince yourself that the game is awful. Whereas so far with my experience with the game, I've just been enjoying it. I have found a few things that kind of seem odd and stand out, and I try to bring those up, such as the one where mobs are randomly attacking you if you're nearby another player. But with that being said, I think that the game is very accurate to its roots. I think they've done a great job keeping everything consistent, and then the big glaring issues that have been brought up by the community, they do seem to address and they seem to fix. So yes, I'm very happy with the way things are going in Classic right now. My biggest complaint is layering. Like I said, I don't really have a solution to offer up for it, but I really, really hope that we can see it leave the game as soon as possible, and I'm scared about phase 2, I guess. But other than that, guys, I've been really, really enjoying these final stress tests, just getting the opportunity to play with more of the community, where the beta was very closed off and it was kind of an invite only thing, whereas being able to play in this final stress test, you're able to play with a lot of new people that haven't been playing Classic, and that was really refreshing. So anyways, this video is kind of getting a little long. Thanks again, guys. I really, really appreciate just you being here and you watching my videos. I'm super excited for Classic. Hope you guys are too. There's a lot more videos to come before Classic launch, so stay tuned for those, and I'll see you tomorrow.